Hello and welcome back to Planet Zoo, where I try to recreate the Antwerp Zoo in the game. In today's episode, I'm working on this nice building which houses the African penguins along with some other birds. From what I could find on the history of the building, it was designed by architect Charles Servet and built around 1878. Originally, and for most of its history, the building was an aviary, and it wasn't until 2014 that the African penguins turned the aviary into their home. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have African penguins, so that's why I'll be using the king penguins instead. So that means further down the line we'll actually have two different king penguin enclosures, as in addition to African penguins, the Antwerp Zoo also has king penguins. So first of all, I'll be making the building itself before moving on to the enclosures on both sides. Right now I'll show some pictures on screen of the two main enclosures attached to this building. The first is the aviary on the top side, a remnant of the original function of the building. The aviary houses some small birds in it, which we won't be able to actually put in there, but stay tuned because I found a great solution to that problem. The second enclosure is of course the African penguin enclosure. As I said earlier, it was only a recent addition being added in 2014. A news article I found about this new addition described the enclosure as a holiday resort with an outside pool and some nice sunbathing spots for the penguins, so we'll see if we can try to recreate that. But yeah, right now I'm making one of these archways with the glass window behind it. The good thing is, if you make one of those, we can just copy them over and over again. But because there's so many small little elements in them, it's actually quite annoying to copy them over. A good tip I have for anyone facing the same issue is if you're working with these kind of details and it's an element in a building that returns over and over and over again, like the same type of window, the same type of wall, also always try to copy it with a piece of wall or a piece of roof or something, because they snap to the grid, and that way all these smaller assets will also snap to the grid, so you don't get like weird angles or anything. So yeah, that's a great thing I found really useful while trying to make this building right here. So I tried to select all these small little pieces right here in order to copy it, and then we had a nice little archway that we could copy. Needed to select all of them once more, and I could copy it as many times as I wanted. So there were 5 arches on this side. I put in some windows, these nice round windows. Copied the whole thing to put it on the other side as well, right there. And the other side actually had one more window compared to the side on the penguin enclosure. So I had to go through all these small little details once again, copy it over. Had a bit of an issue there. It's just so many small bits and things to consider. Forgetting one thing just means you have to do it all over again. But yeah, in the end it worked out, and then I moved on to the other side, copied the small bits to the edge there. And there's on the far right side here, there's like this limestone piece instead of the red brick, so it was actually easier to make because there's less of these small elements. I could just copy this one thing over. There we have the zookeeper's hut there. And then we copied the thing over on the other side as well. And then I realized that the building was not symmetrical. Like, it didn't line up. If you see it here, it didn't line up. So we had a little bit of an issue, which I in the end fixed by just moving this over and moving this whole thing, including the thing we made last time for the flamingos, just over, so it's a nice little, or it's actually two full walls there, so it lines up perfectly with the other side. So that means the building is a bit larger than I think it is in real life. But yeah, we moved on to the rotunda on the end there, which is actually the the spot where the zookeepers will be able to enter the penguin enclosure. And I used these small little pieces of brick to copy the arch over, because the arch was too small for the actual thing was wider, the entrance there. So I just made an arch of myself, and I think it turned out well by just copying over what was already in the game, just spreading it out more. And then I put in the roof, because everything looks better when you have a roof on top of it. And then I was struggling a bit how I would do this end bit here, because it's curved and all, and there's not really that many curved assets in the game. So I just decided to put this at an angle there, and try to cover up as many holes as I could. In the end, I also decided on putting actual assets there, like these metal panels or something, New World panels, I think. And I just put them so you wouldn't see the top of the wall there. So in the end, it's just masked really well. Put in the edge of the roof there, gives it a really nice look in the end. Yeah, the roofs are always hard if you have these irregular shapes, but I think it turned out in the end. So then I once again tried to copy all these small elements to put them on the entrance here, the archway. It didn't line up very well, so I just decided to make the arch that I made here to put it higher, so it actually matched up with the other arches on the sides. And I think that was a good decision, because then I just could copy over, like I just selected all of these assets again, I copied over the whole thing and just moved it so it was right in its place where it should be. Of course, because these these pieces were too long, these long pieces to put there on the bottom, so I had to pick these corner pieces. And then I basically did the same thing for the other side, right there. Nothing special, just moved in the corner pieces again, moved them down. I think I was more streamlined at this point. And then of course the center piece there, the closing stone, or however they call that. So I put that in, and at that point the exterior was basically done, and I moved on to the aviary on the top side. So I had this nice little edge to work with, made it wider, so I had to move the path here and put that all along this side of the building. I was debating between using this or between using walls and barriers. I first put in this glass wall here, but I didn't really like how that looked, and put in the actual barrier there. That turned out much better. I was a bit struggling with how straight that was, but it worked out in the end. So I redid the path here, and was a bit struggling there because of the enclosures too close together. Made that a bit higher, and then I put in the roof there. The roof is actually like more round, like you see me using these round pieces at first. Then I had to use these things here. They're more triangles, if anything, but I think it doesn't really matter that much, because I think it looks more like the actual thing. Well, the actual thing I think is like somewhere between round and flat, but the flat pieces were not good enough. Then we moved on to the other side, to the penguin enclosure, and that had a bit of a weird shape, so I was kind of debating how I would do that shape. In the end, I just decided to split these elements off and to put them at an angle, like that actually looks way more like the actual enclosure. I think that caused the exhibit to be a bit bigger than it actually is, but like all this extra space is really handy in the end if you're working with enclosures. yeah, I think this turned out really well with these angles. Like you can always just split these pieces off and move them. Then I put in this glass barrier, of course. I think it was like I first put it at a certain height, but it had to be higher or something, or it was too high, I don't know. But this glass made it all come together, I think. Yeah, I put it, and then I looked how high it needed to be, and I think it was just above 1 meter and 50 centimeters. And I redid the path here, but in the end I had to change all the pathing because it wasn't really correct with what the actual zoom is. So I moved these assets closer to the path there, made that a bit wider, put in some more bushes and it actually looks quite like close to what it actually is. And I really like this trick of using a tree or putting in a tree and then just moving it down. Now we moved on to the interior here, or the actual enclosure here, where the small birds are. They have a small pond of water, and then it's just some random grass. I moved the roof to be able to see, and I just put in some plants. Yeah, I think that site turned out really well. They also have this small tree on that side there, and I put some rocks in. Nothing really special, just a basic enclosure with some grass and some bushes. I was looking if they actually had, if the game had like small birds or anything, but it hadn't. So I tried coming up with a fix, and this fix is actually like these small little pieces of seagulls. And I think that turned out really well. So in the end I'll show that a bit more in detail. And then I covered these windows with plaster walls, so you couldn't look inside the building, which is quite true to the actual thing. Then I moved on to this, like these the breeding area, or where the penguins can have a little bit of privacy for laying eggs and stuff. Like it's quite common, I think, in zoos for penguins to have these kinds of things. I tried working with the terrain to make this like natural incline, but don't think that turned out really well. So in the end I just worked with actual rocks. Yeah, I put in some actual rocks there. That meant the penguins wouldn't be able to go up there really, but I think it looks better than having the terrain go through the building and stuff like that. These assets were quite big. Of course they are meant for king penguins, when African penguins are of course a bit smaller. But yeah, in the end it turned out really well, I think. Just using all these new what is it, coastal rocks or aquatic rocks, I think they are. Using these staircases, hoping that penguins would actually be able to go up there, but turns out in the end they are not really able to go up there. They can go up the stairs like to some point, but not all the way up. Of course I don't really know how and to what degree the penguins actually use these small little holes for privacy and to do you know what, but yeah, turned out really well, I thought. And then I moved on to the water in the exhibit, or the enclosure. Now, terraforming terrain and paths and barriers don't really go together that well, so I had to move the barriers a bit back, and then I just put them back where they were initially. That's a really good thing I could do there. Put back in the path there, but yeah, of course the terrain was now a bit messed up, so I had to put in the path a bit further away from the barrier than it was originally there. And then of course made sure there were no like big holes underneath these pieces of brick. And then I could just move on to painting a bit more the terrain and putting in some rocks here. I had really good pictures of this enclosure, so I could recreate almost exactly how it was like with the rocks that were there and the plants that were there. So that was really fun. Then I moved on to this entrance of the enclosure for the zookeepers here. Nothing really complicated or anything. Basically just the same thing we had for the flamingos, but for the penguins here. Made sure they had the door. The door was a bit too too small, so I had to put in some rocks there to cover for the big hole underneath it, but I think that doesn't really make it any less beautiful or anything. Put in some nice little bushes there, and I actually found these bushes, these next ones I'm gonna place, like they are really accurate to what is actually in the actual zoo. And of course there were 2 small trees in there, so I had to look for the tree that looked most like it and just move it down into the ground, and that looks like those are 2 small trees. So yeah, and then I put in some rocks to make the edges look a bit nicer. I first thought about using like these same aquatic rocks, but I decided on using these tundra and taiga rocks instead because they went together well with color wise. Put them in on the edges here, like there, and I still put in some aquatic rocks at first, but you can see me here. I'm actually remove them right now, I think. Yeah, right now I'm removing them because the colors didn't really fit in there. Put in some more rocks there, put them in on the bottom as well, just to fill them out, give the terrain a bit more texture. Then I copied over the breeding area that we have on the left side here, because there's 2 of them, and we're coming on the end here of the time lapse, so I'll move into the actual game right now and show you a bit of the changes I made in between recording, and show you a bit of the details that aren't really visible in the time lapse. So see you there. So we are now live inside of the game to have a look at what I did in between recording. So I added the bushes here, I changed the path to be correct. I really like these curves here on the edges. Sorry. And we have our penguins in here, of course. In this building I added this on the roof, and I also added an interior, if I can get in. Camera movements are a bit of a pain in the ass in this game. Okay, there we go. Now we are inside this building. There's a veterinary surgery in here, which is apparently very inefficient. But looks like one of our penguins was actually injured. So yeah, what else did we do? I added some benches and some bins in here. I changed these hedges to be a little bit more natural looking, but it looks like I forgot to delete this. They're a bit more natural looking, and they're not as edgy, or how would I say it, as like that was just bunk bunk bunk. Now it's a nice curve. I added I changed this background here a bit to be more accurate with what it actually is in the zoo, in the Antwerp Zoo, and I'm really happy about how this turned out. There's no small birds in the game yet, I hope, but I just used these little seagulls as a replacement, and I think it really turned out nicely. It's a really nice detail. And I think these things turned out really nicely as well. The penguins can actually go up there, or they can just go up these stairs, I think, like the same here. They can go up to there, but they can't go up any further. Actually, can they go up? Because there's a gap in it. I have no idea. It's a bit wonky, the game, in that aspect. Yeah, we have our nice little penguins. The water is not deep enough for them, I know, but at least they have some water. So in the next episode what we'll be doing is probably building the Okapi exhibit over here. And yeah, so tune in next time. I hope you liked this video, and please consider subscribing. See you next time. Bye!